So, hello BookTube, I am back once again and today to talk to you about Golden State by Ben H. Winters, which is also a book that we read 2 months ago last month for the Optimist Discord Book Club. I'll leave a link to the Discord below if I can find it, and I highly encourage you to all come along and join in the fun. This month we're reading Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, an African fantasy story, so do join in. But for now I'm going to talk about Golden State. As usual, my reviews will be slightly spoilery, although I'll try to avoid the main plot points. So yeah, Golden State, what if the truth was built on lies? Dun dun dun! It is a kind of dystopian, hard-boiled detective story, which you can't really tell from the title, so I'm telling you now. So, like I said, it's, at its heart it's a hard-boiled detective story with all the cliches. So we have, the middle-aged detective who's kind of gruff and cynical about life. He's just divorced, and he has to take this young new star under his wing. He's suffered the loss of someone from the police force who was important to him, etc., etc. The twist is that this detective is a speculator. And what speculators do in this kind of dystopian future, set in California, who would have guessed, by the name. But anyway, what these speculators do is that they detect lies. And they seem to have some kind of supernatural ability to really kind of physically feel and see lies, and lying in this brave new world is illegal, and so the speculator's job is to hunt down people who lie and send them to prison, which is interesting setting, and of course it seems to tie into current discussions about fake news and who can we trust and what is objective news or not, and what is objectivity, does it exist, is there such a thing as an objective reality. So these are all, really topical issues, really important issues, I would say, especially since there are lots of people at the moment who have stakes in getting us to believe or not believe certain things, right? There are lots of people who would be very happy if we didn't believe in the reality of climate change, or who don't want you to believe that there are any potentially suspicious contacts between political campaigns and countries outside of the country that the political campaign took place in. Fill in your own usual suspects there. So yes, so it's an important topic, and it's important to think clearly about that. And so if a book comes along and tackles it, and especially a book that is praised on Goodreads as I realize it's just a random person, but okay, it's praised on Goodreads as the 1984 for the 21st century. Now that comes with some expectations, and I think you as a writer, if you're choosing to take on this topic, which really has an impact on our everyday life, you have something of a responsibility to do something useful with that, or to very clearly not do anything with it, right? To just say, okay, I want a cool setting and I'm not going to do anything else. And that's where this book starts to go wrong for me. So, but let's start at the beginning. So, Winters does a bit of world building, and one of the cool things he does, and you kind of see that right at the beginning, is in this world, people don't greet each other by saying good morning or hello. They greet each other with these kind of asseverations, which are statements of fact. And the interesting thing is there's this sing-song, it's kind of a little almost nursery rhyme pattern to it. There's a call response pattern to it, right? So you might see someone and you say to them, the earth goes around the sun, and then the other person will reply, the moon goes around the earth, right? And then you reply, always has been, and they reply, always will be. And I thought that was really cool, because it does a couple of things all in one go. First of all, it kind of distances us. It shows that this is a different world to the one we live in, right? In the same way that, for example, 1984 opens with the statement that the clocks are striking 13, and treats it in a very matter-of-fact way, so you reader, you immediately realize clock striking 13 is weird. It's not something to do in our world, but apparently in this world, everybody accepts that as normal. So it sets up this difference, and that this world is different. And greeting each other with reaffirming these basic facts is, of course, also fits very nicely with the theme. The second thing it does is that, like I said, this kind of this call and response pattern, right? And it seems unlikely that people can come up with all these nice thematic responses just on the spot. So it kind of implies that this is something that's people have been indoctrinated into, kind of drilled from early childhood. These are the correct responses to give in these situations. So it implies kind of a pervasive attitude throughout society, a somewhat totalitarian system wherein people are trained to treat truth in this manner. And the third thing it does, and that's where it gets subtle and also where the whole thing starts to break down, is that these asseverations are very often either technically not correct or grossly incorrect. Right? So, for example, the example I just gave you, the Earth goes around the Sun, is technically not true. Right? The Earth and the Sun both go around their common barycenter, the common center of mass of those two bodies. And because the Sun is so much more massive than the Earth, that barycenter happens to lie very close to the center of the Sun, and in fact so close to the center of the Sun that it is still inside the Sun, inside the boundary of the Sun. Right? So, yes, for practical purposes, we can pretend that the Earth goes around the Sun, but if we really want to be, precise about it and make accurate measurements or predictions, that is an important detail. And in fact, the first way we detected stars around planets around other stars was by making use of this fact, right? Because the Earth and the Sun both orbit the barycenter. The Sun kind of wobbles, right? Because that center is slightly offset from the center of the Sun. And if you have a very large planet, then that wobble is something you can measure from Earth on a different star, right? So even though there are lots of stars far away from us where we can't actually see the planets, but we know they're there because you can measure that wobble, right? So this is, it's not just some obscure technicality, it is something with physical relevance, right? And that always will be, always has been, that is nonsense, right? Because especially when you're talking about, the moon circling the Earth. I mean, the moon was created at some point. The moon is also getting further away from us, and eventually at some point in the far future, I think the moon is in fact going to leave Earth's orbit, because it's have drifted off so far. Right? So these things are not true. Later on there's a statement that osmium is the heaviest element in the periodic table, which is nonsense. Osmium is the most dense substance, when you get a whole bunch of osmium atoms correctly, but osmium itself has a lower molecular weight than, for example, gold, never mind uranium. So, it kind of, these things that are technically untrue or completely untrue, especially if you take it with the tagline, what if the truth was based on lies, kind of sets up this idea of the reader, hey, if you're aware of these technicalities, like, hey, something's not right here. Is this those lies that the tagline is referring to? But you also see the issue here, there are also common misconceptions, right? So we now have to trust that the author is aware of these misconceptions and is using them as misconceptions intentionally, rather than just thinking that what he's writing down is true. Right? So that's so that's kind of, at that point I was, especially when I saw the first one, I thought, aha, this is technically incorrect. So, but I was already suspicious, like, is this intentional and a sign that I shouldn't trust, the reality of the book that's being narrated to me? Because it's kind of setting me up to question that. Or is it the author himself I should not trust? I should not trust that he's actually put in the intellectual work to make the world work. And quite soon it kind of fell into the second point, right? Because, so he sets up this world where lying is illegal. And more than that, there's a fanatical devotion to the objectively so. And let me get you an example of that. So for example, at one point, the main character Laszlo says to someone else, "Imagine if everyone did it. Imagine if each person was allowed the luxury of claiming their own truth, building a reality of their own in which they can live. Imagine the danger that would pose, how quickly those lies would metastasize, and the extraordinary threat that would pose to the world." Right, so this is more than just blatantly lying. This is also about, creating metaphors, creating fictional stories, and having your own interpretation of things. Right? So we have the state is fanatically devoted to the objectively so. There is only one objective reality, the state enforces that, and everyone has to believe in it. Right? And anybody who rejects that objective reality in whatever shape or form is a danger. Okay, cool. Right? Cool system. Of course, it also sets up a lot of difficulties when you're writing. Right? So, what do your characters do if they can't use metaphor? How do characters react in social situations where we now accept some form of not telling the truth? Right? If you're on a first date and you think someone is a bit awkward but maybe nice, or you think they're nice but they have a hideous t-shirt on, are you allowed to not tell them that you think their t-shirt is hideous? What do you do? How do you handle that in a world where you're not allowed to lie? So there's lots of interesting questions that you can write, that you can think of, and also you make your life quite difficult as an author because you have to stick within this objectively. So you have to make sure your characters don't have divergent interpretations unless it's the point, and you're not allowed to have them lie, and you have to think about what can they use metaphors, etc. Except Winters is not interested in putting in all that work, and that's where it goes wrong. So he tweaks these really harsh rules to have his cake and eat it, and to make his life easier. So for example, we learn that telling white lies in social situations is okay. Lying to make fun of someone, as long as it's clear to everyone that you're joking, is fine. At one point, Laszlo is thinking back to a moment in time when he was still married and his wife compared the stars to diamonds. He said, "Oh, the stars are like diamonds." And he gets upset with her, says, "No, they're not like diamonds, they're flaming balls of gas very far away." And reflecting that, he says, "But it was clear she wasn't lying." Yeah, but the objectively so doesn't care whether you're lying or not. Right? Having a subjective interpretation is already an assault on the objectively so. Right? It's not going to be reasonable about this. Imagine 1984, where people don't show up for the daily 2 minutes of hate or whatever it was because they're feeling a bit under the weather. It's not like the thought police is going to go, well, you were feeling a bit under the weather, it's fine that you didn't show up for the 2 minutes of hate. No, they're going to say, you didn't show up for 2 minutes of hate, you're a danger to society and you need to be executed. Right? Dystopian societies aren't reasonable, that's the point. And this goes further, so we have these speculators who go around arresting people for lying and who can detect lies, physically react to lies, and just as a kind of magical human lie detector. Some of them, either if they're on the other side of the street and you tell a lie, they can feel that even if they don't hear what you're saying. So we have two of these speculators in conversation, and then Sir Laszlo is asked his partner, Miss Page, whether she is in a relationship. Miss Page looks genuinely confused. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because I don't know." So that's Laszlo. He says, "I don't know." The very next sentence then, he says, "Because I want to protect her all of a sudden. I want to direct her away from all of this work, from the dullness and the danger, from me and my dark clothes and dark spirit. Point her away from the whole preposterous enterprise and out towards the rest of our good and golden world, towards the Venice Beach skate park and the clear blue sky, toward her sweetheart and her future." Does that sound like someone who doesn't know why he asked someone something? It sounds like he has a very good, a crystal clear idea of why he asked that. Which means that the statement, "because I don't know," was a blatant lie. But neither of them react to this. Neither of them notice that this is a lie. Even reflecting back, Laszlo doesn't notice that he was lying. Yeah? And this is kind of keeps on going on throughout the book. These kind of breakdowns of this whole thing that the objective truth is so important. Right? So Fiction, of course, doesn't exist in this world, because fiction is a violation of the objectively so. But magicians do, because Laszlo makes some reference to someone being like a magician. But that's odd, because a fiction, yes, okay, it's painting this fictional reality, and if you want to reject that because it's not objectively, it didn't really happen, fine. But it's implicit when you call something a novel in our world that it's not true, that it didn't really happen, right? I know when I pick up this book that it's not talking about a real person who really lived and really had these experiences. A magician, on the other hand, the whole point of a magic show is to make you believe that the magician can actually do magic, even though they're just, doing a clever trick. To make you believe they really can read your mind or magically determine which card you pulled, even though they're just really good at shuffling. So magicians are a much bigger threat to the objectively so than fiction, where it's understood that it's not real, the same way as when you tell a white lie or you're, teasing someone, which is apparently allowed. So why are magicians allowed in this world, but not fiction? Right? There's also, so I read you that speech earlier about the importance of the objectively so, and we can't have people creating their own reality willy-nilly. But then, on the very next page, so we had that whole scene, right, about imagine if everyone made their own reality, everything will break down, blah blah blah, chaos, destruction, despair. And then, less than half a page later we get, no, you've registered your opinion, I say quietly, you told the truth. Your truth. That's not a waste of time. How can you hold forth about the chaos and destruction and despair that would follow if people willy-nilly introduced their own truths, and then half a page later say it's okay to speak your truth? There is no your truth, there is only objectively so. So, as you can tell, I got kind of worked up about these things, and there are more examples of this throughout the book if you start dissecting it. And so, in the end, so I won't come to a final conclusion yet. There's another thing that the book did which kind of annoyed me, and that is it's kind of purposefully set up little things and Easter eggs specifically so you as a reader can feel smart about detecting these things, even though they are blatantly obvious and make no sense. Right? So, for example, there's a thing that in their world they have novels, but these novels are actually autobiographies or biographies, right? They're works of non-fiction about someone who really existed. And supposed to, tell the truth about the person's life. Which, you can kind of feel smart about because it's kind of hinted at first, you can kind of feel smart, they call it a novel, but actually it's a biography. But it makes no sense because this is a world where people still speak English, as far as you can tell. But we're supposed to believe that they've all forgotten what the meaning of the word novel is, and have all forgotten what the meaning of the word biography is, and now call all biographies novels. Right? Why don't they just call them biographies? Makes no sense. And even worse is that the story takes place in Los Angeles in the future. Except we're never told that it's called Los Angeles. This name's kind of been lost to time. Now what's also been lost to time is the meaning of those 7 letters, or however many letters there are, but anyway, the meaning of these white letters in the big sign up on a hill somewhere. Right? And it's alluded to in that way, so it's never spelled out what these letters on the sign say. Except that it's all obviously familiar to any reader, or any reader of some knowledge of that area, that this is referring to the Hollywood sign. So it's implying that these people can't read the word Hollywood, and can't sound out what it means, right? So they have to kind of elude these mysterious letters, we don't know what they mean. And that they've forgotten what Hollywood is all about. And that so that the movie industry doesn't exist, fine. That the state has eradicated all memory of what the movie industry was and what it involved, fine. But all the other places still carry the old place names, right? There's still, Venice Beach, there's still all kinds of street names that are still used. There's still, other place names that have remained. So all these other place names people still remember, but Hollywood they don't. They've forgotten about, just that you as a reader can feel smart about the fact that you recognize it was the Hollywood sign. So yeah, in the end I got rather annoyed about the book, and maybe that's just because I want too much from it. Right, at its heart, it's a somewhat cliche hardboiled detective story, and the world's been given an interesting twist just to give it an interesting twist and not make it like 13 in a dozen other hardboiled detective stories. Which is fine. I guess what I got annoyed at is that I feel that this issue of objective realities and who to believe and what can we know and how can we know it and how do we know that we know is something that is really important in our daily political lives at the moment. And if you're going to try and tackle that in your book, then it deserves some intellectual rigor in the way that you're trying to tackle that. And I think I felt really let down by this book, in the sense that it kind of wants to introduce this, but then doesn't want to deal with any of the consequences of introducing this topic, right? It's a difficult topic, but I don't want to put in the work to actually deal with the topic in a manner that it deserves. I just want to kind of nod to it so I can feel topical and that I'm tapping into the modern zeitgeist or whatever. And I guess that kind of got my goat. If you're able to set that aside or not be bothered by it, I think all in all, it was a decent story. It kept me reading, it kept me entertained. I did want to find out kind of what the plot, where the plot was going, what the mystery was, who the person was behind all the things that were happening. Unfortunately, the novel also lets you down a bit there because it kind of jumps the gun a bit. It jumps the shark a bit. But yeah, as a hardboiled detective story, it was decent. So yeah, that was my thoughts and ranting about Golden State. If you've read it and have your own thoughts and think I was completely off the mark and it's the greatest book ever and does actually deal with these topics well, then please do let me know in the comments down below and we can discuss. And other than that, have a nice day and see you next time. Bye bye.